I have started the recording.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So today's agenda, I have some updates, and then Christine will talk about the evaluation that we're having done of the professional development system, and provide you some information about professional development in the next program year, so you can begin planning for that, and you'll have the information for your 24-25 budgets. And then we will have a presentation from West Ed, which is related to one of the aspects of professional development for next year. So first of all, I guess if everyone could mute themselves when you come on, if you're not automatically muted. And if you come on with camera, just please be aware that you will be recorded with camera on if you are concerned about that. So additional funds, I know this is top on everyone's mind. And I wanted to let everyone know that I'm moving forward with the next steps. That first of all, thank you very much. By far the majority of the proposals that we received were clearly very well thought out. You really worked to make sure you were meeting the purpose of the funds. Clearly had looked at your budgets, and were proposing good amounts. So by far the majority of them were acceptable as submitted. We anticipate that we will be able to fund all of them at close to the level that you requested. They're the ones kind of, we talked about having to prioritize. There might be a couple that don't get everything they requested, but we think we will be able to give most of you what you requested. Some agencies requested funds for both 23-24 and 24-25. Some of you only requested funds beginning 7/1. So those of you who requested funds, that include some funds this year, hoping to get funding notification letters to you very early next week, having the funding adjustments open in eGrants next week. Please get those in as soon as possible. If you have things calculated as well as you indicated in your proposals to us, I think you should be able to complete those funding adjustments as quickly as possible. And that is because they have to be through comptrollers by May 6th in order for us to do a funding adjustment for this year's grant. If for some reason you think you're not going to be able to do that, please have a conversation with your advisor, and we can, if you just end up not being able to get the money this year, we can still make sure that you get the amount you proposed for next year. For those of you who only requested funds as of July 1st, we will notify you of approval for next week, but you won't actually do anything with that until you're working with next year's grants. But we'll let you know so that you can begin preparing for it. Okay, so that's the additional funds. So advisors have gotten questions from a couple of people, and I know some of you are new in your roles, and so you haven't had to deal with continuation grants. So for the 24-25 grants, with the exception of the tutoring program grants, which terminate June 30th, and therefore we held a competition for those funds. We're still working on that part of it. The ones that are continuing, so the adult ed 064, the section 243 061 family literacy, those are continuation grants. So the plan is to do for the division, we will do a data export early on April 29th to pull your year-to-date data, which we will be using to make decisions regarding funding for 24-25, as we indicated in the initial award letters when we held the competition. We do look at progress towards contracted enrollment and outcomes and other criteria to determine the amounts that you get in the following years. We hope to have the decisions made regarding funding for each agency in early May. Those amounts have to go through PDE's approval process. So we try to get them through as quickly as possible, but there are a lot of people involved in that. The goal is to get funding notification letters to you by June 1st, informing you how much you can apply for or you can put in your budgets. Grants will then open, and we anticipate grants being due June 30th. As always, once the grant is open, you can submit it as soon as you want to. And the earlier you get it done, the earlier your advisor can begin looking at it. Now, what I would say is, even though you may not get the official amount until just before June 1st, we anticipate that unless there have been significant issues with you, everyone will get at least level funding. Keep in mind that family literacy programs, you're getting a small additional amount because of 22-23 funding, and the plan, assuming level funding from at the state level, the plan is to continue that amount into next year. Let's see. And then also we will have let you know within the next couple of weeks about the additional funding for staffing. So you'll have that information as well as you begin planning within the next couple of weeks. But we won't be able to give you a final kind of, this is what we anticipate giving you next year until late May by June 1st. Okay. Last month in the webinar, we talked about the ESL assessments, and we told you that the ESL assessments kind of, I'm saying in quotation marks, the old best literacy, best plus, the ones that were originally supposed to expire this June have been extended. But we didn't mention anything about the CASAS math goals, and that one is not extended. So there is the current CASAS math goals will no longer be valid as of June 1st, 2024. So you can continue to use the current CASAS math goals through June 30th of this year, but you cannot use it as of July 1st. You will have to use the CASAS math goals 2 beginning July 1st. You cannot pair a math goals with a math goals 2. The IT folks are working on getting the 23-24 e-data ready so that you can begin entering CASAS math goals 2 this year for students who come in, but that is not ready yet, unfortunately. We gave them the information several months ago, but they haven't been able to complete it yet. So we will let you know as soon as possible when that is available, but we did want to kind of clarify that since we had failed to mention the CASAS math goals in last month's webinar.
Amanda, there's a question in the chat
Yes.
about whether there was a reason given for the extension of CASAS life and work.
So yes, you mean from the federal level, there were multiple new ESL assessments. So we in Pennsylvania use the CASAS. We used to use the CASAS life and work. That's, we're going to transition to this CASAS steps, and we use BEST. There is an additional assessment for ESL, and several of the vendors of ESL assessments didn't have everything ready for states. And so states were expressing their concern to OCTAE that there was not going to be a smooth transition from the existing assessments to the new assessments, and OCTAE heard that, and so they extended the current ESL assessments for another year to give all states who wanted to use them the chance to have a smoother transition. Did that address the question? Yeah.
There's another question. Are we able to purchase the paper-based CASAS math goals too?
So I mean, we haven't been able to approve it yet for this year, because you can't enter it. That's the thing holding us back. But I'll think about that and get back to you, okay? I hadn't thought about that when I put this slide in. We'll get back to you on that, okay?
And then another question, does this mean we can transition to CASA steps?
So again, right now, you cannot enter the new CASAS tests into eData. So that's kind of what's holding us back from telling you can actually start using them, because if you use them at this point, you still can't put them in eData. So you wouldn't be able to document that you've used it, and we wouldn't be able to report it. But yes, you can. So beginning at least July 1st, you can start using the CASA steps. It's not that you cannot use it next year. It's just that you will be able to use both of them next year. But you can't combine them, right? You can't pair a life and work reading with a CASA steps reading. I hope I'm being clear.
Yes, both people who asked questions said yes, thank you, got it.
Okay, good, thank you. Sorry for the confusion around the CASAS. It was really that issue, but with not all of the vendors being ready to truly implement their new ESL assessments. This is a reminder for the few agencies that have IETs. I've been looking at the access template, get a little nervous. So please, as a reminder, your class, if you have a class that is an IET, it's been approved by the division, you're offering an integrated education and training activity. When it is entered in eData in the class section, there is a special program type drop down. If it is an IET, you must select either IET with credential if it leads to a post-secondary credential, or IET without credential if it does not need to lead to an occupational credential. Do not use in-person only, do not use remote only, do not use any of the other special program types. It has to say IET with credential or IET without credential. That is how we pull the data that we need for federal reporting. That's how we identify those classes. So if it doesn't say IET with credential, it doesn't get reported as an IET and you didn't do one. So please, please, please make sure you're double checking that special program type. As a follow-up, if your IET leads to a person getting a post-secondary credential and they get it, there is a special tab, which we added about 2 years ago. The tab is called IET/WPL/PS credential. Gotta love acronyms. And you need to enter that post-secondary credential attainment on that tab. If you happen to also put it in the agency specific goals, which is how we had you doing it prior to adding that tab, if you want to put it there for your own purposes, that's okay, but it has to be if you have an IET with credential, those people end up in a cohort of credential attainment, and if they attain the credential, we need you to enter it in this post-secondary credential outcomes tab, this IET WPLPS credentials outcome tab. Thank you very much. And my last slide, this is a reminder because we've had some confusion at agencies when we've done monitoring. We've had some questions about agencies that have been approached about maybe becoming testing sites. So this is just a reminder that any costs associated with actual high school equivalency testing are not allowable expenditures with grant funds. You can't use grant funds to cover them. So for example, you cannot, and I think everyone's clear on this, you can't pay for a student's GED registration fees or HiSET registration fees. That's not an allowable expense. But it also means if you want to be a testing site, and you're going to have a staff member who proctors the HiSET test or the GED test, the staff, that time and the associated benefits when they're doing that high school equivalency proctoring cannot be charged to our grants. If you are purchasing technology for a computer lab, and those computers will be used some of the time for high school equivalency testing, the cost of those computers, the cost of maintaining them, and the IT support needs to be split proportionately. I mean, if you're using that lab for classes 90% of the time and 10% of the time it's for high school equivalency testing, then you're going to need to split the costs associated with that along the same lines, with proportionate. If you have a secretary who spends 10% of her time, signing in people who are getting ready to take the high school equivalency test, again, you're going to need to put some of that person's time on another funding source. You can't charge the grant. Now, I will say if you have teachers or student support specialists who are helping students understand how to register, how to make an account, things like that. In that case, you're supporting the students. It's kind of, the transition support and instructional support, so that you don't have to worry about. But if somebody's really working on actually administering and running the high school equivalency test or paying for the students' tests, those you have to find other funding sources for. I believe that is my last slide.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. We did have a thank you in the chat for you about the explanation of entering the credential in the outcome tab.
You're welcome.
So, we have another question. Is it still okay to purchase GED ready practice tests with PDE funds?
Yes. The GED ready practice tests or the HiSET practice tests, those are considered part of the education and supporting individuals to prepare for them. That's preparation. So yes, those are still allowable.
Okay, great. She said thank you. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about something that's coming up, a professional development system evaluation. The division has contracted with Blair Toso. I think many of you may know Blair from when she used to work at Penn State. She's going to conduct a formal evaluation of certain aspects of our professional development system. The last time we had a formal evaluation was almost 10 years ago. So it's time to see if the changes we made back then are useful and what we might want to adjust in the future. I don't want to just continue to go forward with something that was decided 10 years ago. I want to clarify upfront that this is not an evaluation of you, of your agency, or your team. This is an evaluation of the system. So it's more an evaluation of the work that I'm doing and the work that the PDS is doing. Your input is important. So, all answers are going to be confidential. There will be no identifying characteristics presented in the report. Gender neutral pronouns will be used. So, please participate as you are asked. On Tuesday, I'm going to send a link out to a survey. It's a very short survey. It should only take 3 or 4 minutes to complete. I'm going to send the survey link to the program administrators, and then it will also go out to the whole list through Constant Contact. But I would appreciate if you would not only complete the survey, but if you would also personally forward the link to your entire staff. We're trying to cast as wide a net as possible with this initial survey. So, if people see it in multiple places, that's a good thing. So that link will come out on Tuesday. Blair will be contacting you for interviews and to set up focus groups with you and your staff. Some of you will actually get a site visit. She'll come in person. The timeline is pretty tight. So I'm going to ask you to make every accommodation you can, to the schedule that she requests, even if it means, getting a substitute teacher to cover or rescheduling other meetings. This is super important for the site visits. She's on a pretty tight schedule. And I just want to reiterate that your input in this process is crucial. And I, appreciate your participation. In advance, I'm saying thank you for your participation because I really need it. I need to hear what everybody has to say. I'll be sending an email out today after this meeting, just kind of repeating what I just said to you so you have it in writing. And then again, the survey will come out on Tuesday. Next slide, please, Amanda. So as you know, I think the PDS conducted a needs assessment earlier this year. Many of you participated in that. And we got together and spent some time reviewing the needs assessment. And there was a lot of takeaways, and some of them are going to be implemented next year. But some ideas that really stood out to us were requests for shorter courses, requests for more individualized PD, and for more asynchronous PD. So to that end, one of the changes that we're making this coming year is that we're going to have most of the courses that we called institutes, those sort of longer courses, will be offered upon request. So, and they'll be done at your individual agency. So you can gather a group of instructors and the PDS will work directly with your program or PLC. So the schedule will fit your needs as opposed to, the webinars being scheduled at a certain time and having to get all the agencies together. You'll get more information about this from the PDS before you start to work on your PIPD plans, which I know we still have some time on. I think they're holding a webinar on June 14th where they'll, talk about the PIPD plans, but I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that was going to be the way we were going to offer those this year in response to what you asked us for. There will be a new offering this year that we're still going to do in a statewide cohort, and that is DRAW, Digital Resilience in the American Workplace. I went to the initial national DRAW training, and I really think your instructors will improve their practice if they participate. The nice thing about DRAWs is that it helps instructors to incorporate digital skills into their existing lessons. So it doesn't require teachers to scrap everything they've already done and write a whole new lesson plan. The teachers will learn how to take what they have and just kind of infuse it with digital skills. And the teachers, we've had 4 teachers participate in the national training, and they've been working with staff at their programs, and I think they've been quite successful. So you'll be hearing more about that from Chuck coming up soon. But the way it's going to work is it'll start with some asynchronous work, and then you'll have a remote kickoff probably in September-ish. Participants will work through some asynchronous modules, and they'll participate in some learning circles during October and November. So, they'll do the asynchronous work, and then they'll attend the learning circles and, discuss what they did in the modules. They'll also have a coach to help them with implementing digital literacy, and that'll be like late in November or early December. And then the closing webinar will be in December. So it's about a 4-month course. Everything will be done, via Zoom or asynchronous work in the portal. A lot of the work you'll be able to do at your own schedule. And, we'll see what the interest is. I would think every agency would want to sign up for this, but I know that you have competing priorities. If the interest is high, we'll offer a second cohort in the spring. So we'll see how that goes. And I would contact Chuck Klinger if you have any questions, sooner than the PDS does a webinar on this. The final PD opportunity I want to highlight is a collaboration that Pennsylvania has with WestEd. WestEd's a national education research group. Amanda, could you go to the next slide?
Did it
Okay.
advance?
It did. It just did. It must slow on my end for some reason.
Okay.
Okay. So WestEd received an IES grant. IES is the Institute for Educational Sciences, and that's part of the U.S. Department of Education. And the grant was to develop an online math course for adult basic education students, and they needed a partner state, and we offered to be their partner. So they've started the study, and they started the project, and thus far they've conducted small usability and feasibility studies to sort of inform the course design. Teachers across the state have been participating, and in a moment you're going to hear some details about the project from a representative from WestEd, and she also has sort of some testimonials from some of your colleagues. But I just wanted to give you a heads up about the sort of statewide pilot study portion of this project, and that's going to start in January. We're going to be requiring all agencies to potentially participate. Sometime this summer or early fall, we're going to choose the teachers to participate by lottery. It was very important for the design of the study that the participants be random, not chosen. So teaching, for the teachers that are chosen, teaching the curriculum will be mandatory. We'll talk a little more about the participation in the study. We can't require participation in the study, but if you're going to be teaching the curriculum anyway, your teachers probably should participate in the study because it's really going to have a lot of benefits for them and for you. But we'll give more details about that later. I just wanted to kind of let you know now that some of your teachers will be participating in this, teaching this curriculum. WestEd will provide all the professional development and pay for all of those costs. That'll happen in January of next year. And they'll give ongoing support as the project progresses. So your teachers won't be left hanging with this. You'll be getting an email from Amanda after this webinar so that you have the communication in writing for project planning purposes. And we're also, I'm sure you have questions, but I'm going to ask you to hold those for just a minute. I'm going to turn it over to WestEd so that Catherine can talk about the project itself, and then we'll come back and we'll take all your questions, and you'll be able to either put them in the chat or unmute. So Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you. Amanda, if you could stop sharing and allow Catherine to start sharing.
Great. I'll just share my screen. All right. Okay, can you see that all right?
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint.
Wonderful. Okay. Good morning. I'm Catherine Schwinden. I'm a researcher at WestEd. I'm also the participant liaison for the Andy pilot study and a former adult ed instructor. Thank you for giving me the time this morning to talk to you about this interesting work. So I want to be very respectful of your time. We have a brief agenda. I'll give you an overview of the Andy project. We can take a closer look at a lesson, hear more about the pilot study timeline and responsibilities, leave some time for questions if you have that. But before we dive in, let's go ahead and hear from an Andy instructor, Kim, who we have worked with over this most recent phase of the study.
So Andy has been different because there's been a lot more student collaboration. So when we went virtual in 2020, it was very difficult to figure out how to have that student to student focus. There was a lot of just students chatting with teachers and not a lot of collaborative work, but Andy's been different because you can have students working in groups and learning different tech skills to be able to collaborate together. on the math that they're learning. And it's always really helpful to not just have the student's perspective or the teacher's perspective of how to do a math problem, but like hearing from other students and students learning from other students can be really effective in their learning.
Great.
So,
All
and
right. So in terms of the Andy course and the professional learning, the Andy course is multimodal in that the collaborative activities can be conducted either in class using the printed materials or online with a digital version of the collaboration activity and an integrated video conferencing system. The audience for the class is learners enrolled in adult basic ed, basically levels 3 or 4. The digital literacy tools and instructions are highlighted in the Andy PD and embedded in the course. In terms of the course topics, the course was designed to cover a duration of 10 to 15 weeks. The course consists of 8 modules covering mathematical topics that were chosen based on survey data and feedback from adult ed instructors. And the topics were chosen because they are the most useful for adult learners who are working towards HSE attainment goals. Each module is made up of a number of units, with most modules, excuse me, having 3. Each unit includes about 45 minutes of asynchronous digital work that learners complete before and after class, as well as a 45-minute collaborative activity that can be done online or in class. So that means that each unit takes about 90 minutes to complete. Across all 8 modules, there are 30 units, which means a target of about 4.5 hours of work per week for the learners. Over the course of a 10 to 15 week implementation, the learners can expect to spend a total of 45 hours on the course. And to support instructors like Kim in the uptake of the course, we provide multi-layered supports, including a 2-day workshop prior to teaching, coaching calls bi-weekly for the first 10 weeks, and instructor notes and resources. So we asked Kim which of the Andy professional development supports have been helpful.
So I think all of them. Having the 2-day institute super helpful, especially if you've never taught the Andy course before, because you might have no idea of what you're getting yourself into. And so it's really helpful to kind of have that. 2 days is really important. It's helpful to have that step-by-step guidance to kind of really break it down ahead of time so you know what to expect as you're going into classes, and then have whoever the coach is right there walking you through it. The coaching calls have also been really helpful because not only can you figure out, like, if you have questions about what you're teaching or questions about how you're teaching, it's nice to be able to bounce ideas off of the coaches, and try some new things in class. If students aren't having as much chat, like they're not talking as much as you'd like them to in group work, it's great to be able to bounce those ideas off of the coaches of how can you get them talking in their groups. And they also have tools that are provided during the coaching calls that have been helpful to me in figuring out how to teach different material. The instructor notes, I probably couldn't teach without the instructor notes. It's helpful to have a guided timeline of how long each activity should take, and then also having, like, that includes like the answer keys for everything, and what it has some notes of like what it is expected like students might answer. So that's really helpful. And then being able to email as well. Lewis is super fast on email. If there's ever an issue, he responds like within 30 minutes. Awesome. And like, yeah, anytime I email, someone's always responsive right away. And that's kind of a last resort of like, hey, I'm having an issue right now, but like people respond right away. So all of it's super helpful. It's definitely well supported. I think that the teachers are well supported in taking on the Andy course.
Great. So in terms of our design principles, there are 4 complementary design principles that are the foundation of the Andy model. The first is active and collaborative. The Andy course is centered around an active, collaborative curriculum. Also flexible and goal-oriented. The design utilizes a digital online platform that involves adaptivity and the representation of learning activities in such a way to easily track engagement and progress. Another of the foundational design principles is that the material is relevant. The learners know, use, and enjoy math relevant to their daily lives. Such tasks are usually open-ended and use real-world contexts, which provide an entry point for learners to engage in discussion and encourage learners to approach the problem from various angles and bring different strategies to the table. And finally, it's relationship-centered. We know that learning math and working in groups can be a potentially intimidating experience, particularly for adult learners who have been away from the classroom. Collaborating with peers requires patience and perspective taking. So in order to create that safe space for collaborative learning in the Andy courses, all of the Andy instructors have access to research-based professional learning materials to help them create those classroom norms and a culture that's conducive to group collaboration. So in the same way that we asked instructors like Kim for feedback about PD, we also asked just for general feedback about the course from both students and instructors aligned to those foundational principles. So in terms of active and collaborative, we heard that Andy is completely different in the concept of working together to solve something, excuse me, and that you can actually have a conversation and a dialogue to solve a problem, not just rely on an algorithm. In terms of being relevant, one instructor told us that Andy changed the way that I teach the course because we see math in a more friendly perspective. Everybody hates math when they come into the GED class. I think this changes their perceptions because they see these are some of the things they do in their lives every day. The online platform keeps it flexible and goal-oriented. It makes it a lot simpler for the students. They look at that and say, oh, I can achieve this. There's only like a couple questions, and it kind of helps move me along, and you see, you know where I need to go. So the idea there is it's by using the online platform and the learning map, it's less daunting than being presented with an entire block of math problems. And then lastly, relationship centered. Like the collaboration part, I share knowledge with my friends. With the good collaboration, you can learn from the teacher and your friends. So we're going to take a closer look at the lesson. As I told you, Andy has about 30 units spread across its 8 modules. Every course unit is built around a collaborative activity. So that's the circle in pink. Every unit contains other individual activities to support learning before and after the collaboration. Every unit follows this cycle. So there are diagnostic and adaptive prerequisite supports, that green circle, that supports lower level learners and learners that just need some refreshers on underlying mathematics related to the unit. Then there are preparation activities, individual and online, that tie directly to the collaboration math focus. The social emotional activities for reflection run across the entire unit. And then there are consolidation and technology activities. Those are in the blue circles. The diagnostic and associated adaptivity saves learners time by allowing them to identify what underlying math skills they need to work on and move past math skills that they already know. So learners start every unit by doing a quick diagnostic. It's a set of targeted questions that help learners determine what they already know. And this allows them to skip past familiar concepts and focus on other concepts, if need be, on the unit learning map. The learning cycle is applied to every unit in the Andy course. All right, and this is what a collaboration would look like in the actual instructor notes. You heard Kim reference those in her earlier conversation. So the instructor notes include an overview of the prerequisite assignments, the targeted level and the math topics, guidance for using full group or small group discussions, the suggested timing, and the learning goals. The lesson materials include a real-world context and the student answer key. That's a quick look at a lesson. Now we'll move on to the pilot study timeline and responsibilities. So right now we're wrapping up phase 2, the feasibility part of the study, and we'll spend the summer and the fall making course improvements that are informed by feedback, like you saw, from the instructors, the students, and our research on deep learning in mathematics. So that means that the most polished version of the course will be ready for testing in the pilot study. So phase 3, the pilot study and improvement phase. In terms of the timeline, we'll start with a kickoff, which is 2-day PD in late January. And data collection will take place January through May. In terms of, the participant responsibilities, those include attending the PD Institute and the coaching calls, teaching the Andy course, completing the surveys and the reflections, and encouraging students to complete the surveys. For participant supports, we offer weekly emails. That's part of my role as the participant liaison. Bi-weekly coaching calls for the first 10 weeks. So that'll be 5 total calls. And access to instructor notes and resources. So that, spring has sprung in Massachusetts and my allergies are kind of out of control. So I apologize for my croaky frog voice. I do have time for questions and answers. If anyone would like to drop a question in the chat, I'm also going to share my email. If you think of a question for me, please go ahead and email me at kschwinn@wested.org. And I'll be happy to get back with you. And that is my last slide.
Thanks, Catherine. Just a note, you can email Catherine questions about the course and the study, but not about the PDE requirements. That would, come to me or Amanda.
Great.
So
right. I'll stop sharing now, Christine.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
Thank
Amanda,
you.
you can go back to our PowerPoint, perhaps. So we are at the question portion of the day. See the big question mark? So any questions for Catherine or for me or for Amanda, please put them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay, I guess we don't have any questions. I did my good full minute of wait there. All right, Amanda, do you have anything that you want to say for wrap up here?
I do not know, other than, as always, if you think of questions after the fact, please, if it's about the PD requirements, you would reach out to Christine. Otherwise, if you have other questions, please reach out to your advisor. Once we know when CASAS will be available in eData, we will let you know. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.